evening. I'd like to call this meeting to order. If you would rise with me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Ms. Posey, would you call the roll?
Yes, Madam Supervisor. Trustee Bassano?
Here.
Trustee Krasinski?
Here.
Trustee Nevers?
Present.
Trustee Smith?
Here.
Treasurer Goodhue?
Here.
Clerk Posey here. Supervisor Dunn? Here. All members are present.
Thank you. We have a couple of changes to the agenda. Ms. Posey?
Yes, we have two postpones, request for postpone. Item number 7 would like to be postponed until August 14th, and item number 19 postponed until July 24th. That's all I have.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Madam Chair, again, which ones?
Number 7
Okay.
postponed until August 14th, July 20, or postpone number 19 until July 24th.
Thank you.
Is there a motion to approve the amended agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
Motion by Ms. Goodhue,
Second.
seconded by Ms. Posey, to approve the amended agenda. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed by saying nay. That motion carries. The approval of the bills, as usual, there are 2 bill runs. If anyone wishes an item removed, please indicate so at this time.
Madam Chair, I would like to have vendor number 10244 Nemeth Law pulled from our bill run and discussed separately on a separate vote, the bill and the vote on a separate vote.
Madam Chair, we'll move that from the bill run and add it under trustees section as 15A. Discussion regarding invoice from Nemeth Law.
Madam Chair, if I may, what page is that on, Mr. Bussino?
It is under vendor 10244 Nemeth Law PC, account number 122282578. I'm not exactly sure what page that's on in the bill run. I can count them for you, but they go alphabetical order. So I don't think the bill run is numbered by page numbers
Yes,
as
it
I
is.
look at it.
They are up in the upper right-hand corner. It's usually up there.
Okay. All right. So give me a second. I'll look it up.
All right.
Well, then I gotta scroll through this. Sorry, it's taking me a second to scroll through this.
I think it's on page 22.
Is it page 22? I'm sorry, my computer keeps scrolling. I keep scrolling past it and then to it.
22? It's 22. No, it's on this one.
No, it's not.
No, it's not this one. It's on this one.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
What the hell, Bryce? My computer's not working.
And I'm trying to scroll through it right
All
now.
right, never mind.
I'm okay. I'm just gonna keep drinking water.
My computer ain't working.
Almost there. We have 228 pages of our board packet tonight, I'm sorry. I'm almost there.
While you're looking for that, Bob, can you come up here for a minute, because it seems that this isn't working up here? No.
Why do we need the page number? I'm just wondering. I gave you the, I gave,
We're just,
I
just
gave you
where
the
it was
vendor
at.
number.
That's all, Mr. Bussino, nothing else. Look at this. Yeah,
Can you scroll that down for me? Keep scrolling.
that's it.
We found it down here.
We
Tim.
got it.
We have it, Tim.
They have it.
Mr. Busno, it's page 19. On the page.
That might have been, maybe I forgot. All right, that's what I said. Okay, thanks. Yeah. All right, cool. Thank you.
Yeah, maybe.
Are we all set?
Just gave you my sheet.
Yes, it was page 19. Like I said, vendor number 10244. In the future, I will give the page number. We've never had to do that when we removed a bill before. I don't know if it's something, a new procedure, but in the future, I'll make sure it's the page.
Just ask for the page number, Mr. Bussino, nothing else. Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
That's all.
if there are no other issues with the bill runs, I move that we approve both,
With the exception of that removal.
with the exception of that, yes.
Motion by Ms. Nevers,
Support.
supported by Ms. Goodhue to approve the bill runs with the one item removed. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed by saying nay. That motion carries. Next, we have the approval of the meeting minutes from June 26th. Are there any additions, deletions, or corrections?
Hearing none, I'll make a motion to approve the previous meeting minutes from June 26, 2019.
Support.
Motion by Ms. Posey, seconded by Ms. Goodhue, to approve the minutes from June 26th. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed by saying nay. That motion carries, and then we'll move on to the closed session meeting minutes.
Madam Chair, I'll move on those.
Motion
I'll
by
make a motion on that.
Mr. Krasinski,
Support.
seconded by Ms. Posey to approve the closed session minutes from June 26th. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed by saying nay. That motion carries. The consent agenda contains routine matters that come before the board. If you wish an item removed from consent, please indicate so at this time.
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion that we approve the consent agenda items as presented.
Motion by Ms. Goodhue,
Second.
seconded by Ms. Posey to approve the consent agenda. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed by saying nay. That motion carries. Next, we have public comments. This is on agenda items only. Please come to the podium, state your name. Remember, there's a 3-minute time limit.
Good evening. My name is Dennis Martin, representing ASME 1917, the management union. I would like to address item number 15. At the May 22nd meeting, Trustee Krasinski requested the item to recruit and hire a non-union HR manager position be added to this evening's agenda. He requested Mr. Assorti to prepare a job description. We have some concerns with this request. Why is a trustee handling manpower issues? Maybe I'm wrong, but I was under the impression that the days of trustee handling manpower studies and directing the hiring of personnel had ended. At least that's what our management union was led to believe during negotiations. Why was this not identified in the manpower study completed by Mr. Assorti? By bringing on another person, I think it be inferred that the combining of the HR director and that of the township attorney has not been beneficial to the township operationally and one would assume financially. The biggest issue we have with this request is the township is not eligible to hire another non-represented position in the HR department. After contacting Merck, we discovered that Macomb Township is only allowed 2 non-represented positions. Those positions are currently occupied by Mr. Sorty and his confidential assistant. Unless one of those individuals are vacating their positions, the township is in violation of the Merck certification. This is something I would think the HR director would know and would be addressed in his memo to the township board regarding this matter. By not doing so, the unions in the township can assume that either he is ignorant in the matter or simply has chosen not to inform the board of this potential Merck violation. To be clear, ASME is not opposed to this position being created, it just needs to be included in our bargaining unit, like all the other managers' positions. Although, once again, we would question if the need does exist, why was it not included in Mr. Sorty's manpower audit last year? Any such position being brought into the collective bargaining agreement needs to be signed off on by the union along with compensation in accordance with that agreement. To not do so would give the appearance that the township is handling this hiring the same way they give out work to attorneys litigation. We do not believe hiring an HR manager would help the situation that was brought to your attention when 2 of our members resigned. We have stated numerous times that combining the HR and legal positions was a mistake and has proven, as we expected, to have numerous conflicts of interest. By you considering this hire, I think we can all put to rest the notion that the township is saving money on combining of these 2 positions. Between all the new staff Mr. Sorty has hired and all the legal work he farms out, the township is losing financially. We ask you not to allow the township to be in violation of the Merck ruling and to avoid the unit clarification hearing and penalties that could be associated with this action. If you believe the township needs more manpower in the HR department, this position needs to be included in the ASME bargaining unit. Thank you.
Our jury address is on file in the clerk's office. 2 items on the agenda, number 8 and number 15. First of all, I'm requesting a no vote or deny a request for a no vote on the right of way. Let them go back to the drawing board, figure out a way they can pay for it without just coming to our cash register to withdraw the funds. The bigger item is item number 15. I'm all for splitting the 2 positions of legal counsel and HR director, but I'm requesting a no vote on this item because it has no indications that the legal counsel will be removed from his position of HR director, nor his pay being reduced equally to absorb this new position. This position that was posted online with the pay and benefit packages is over $100,000. That's a ridiculous salary. You can post this position online for half that amount, and you'll have more than enough candidates filling this to choose from. Without removing our legal counsel's HR director, we don't need this position. It's just lightening his workload for nothing. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Kathy Western, and I would like to speak to item number 15, the new position being proposed for the HR department. And as was noted last month, Trustee Roger Krasminski, very late in a very long meeting, used his comments to direct Thomas Orty to come up with a job description for HR manager. Mr. Krasminski, when this item comes up tonight, we're hoping you would share with us what inspired you to do it at this time and what studies were done that told you that this position was needed to be added. And the fact that an employee cannot get his work done would not be sufficient reason to bring more positions to this department. If an employee cannot get his work done, it would be time to do a performance review. And so if you're behind in a performance review of anyone in the HR department, maybe tonight would be the night to reconcile that. Just over a year ago, Thomas Orty presented to this board an HR audit. He did not forecast the need for a new FTE at that time. So how can you vote yes on this without having some further study and an update of that HR audit? When he presented the audit to the board, Mr. Assorti did indicate what would happen going forward. And I'm reading from the minutes of your own meeting at that time. And the Human Resources Director indicated that departments who would make future requests for positions, he would update the HR audit, forward that to you, and recommend adjustments as needed. Did he do that? Do you have an updated HR audit? Now, I also found the memo in the packet tonight from Mr. Assorti asking for this position to be very interesting. And let me read from that. Mr. Assorti writes that he has evaluated the basis for the request. Now, note he's talking about this like it's third person. And he studied the compensation range and developed through review of local area and township wages with benefits to be negotiated. So Mr. Krasminski and Mr. Assorti, please show us your data justifying the position and the updated HR audit. And Mr. Assorti, please share the compensation studies you did. And please remember that in the past, when you attempted to justify the very existence of the combined position, you compared it to the best practices of the Detroit Water and Sewage Department. And we did not regard that as a positive thing. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Frank Cusimano, 16188 Jenny Drive. I'm not going to repeat what's already been said. I think it's covered the grounds very well. On item 8, I will say that any trustee who votes for that item, I will actively campaign against the reelection of that trustee next election cycle, so help me God. I will also campaign actively against any trustee who votes for agenda item 15, which, as has been pointed out, is exposing the township to unfair labor practices, which I presume the highly compensated HR director should be aware of. Thank you.
Anyone else? Very well. We will move on to unfinished business. Number 7 has been removed from the
Postponed.
agenda.
Postponed.
Pardon?
Postponed.
Postponed. Thank you. So we'll move on to number 8. And this is a request to approve or deny the Clinton Macomb Public Library Board of Trustees' request for Macomb Township to pay for the Broughton Road right-of-way improvements. This was postponed from the June 26th meeting so that members of that board could be here. Mr. Tito, would you be the spokesman for your group? And
all of us would be available.
please come to the podium so everyone can hear you.
All 3 of the residents of the library board from Macomb Township are available to answer questions tonight, as is Larry Neal, the director.
Thank you. Board members, if you have questions, now's the time. Ms. Posey, you contacted the Department of Roads?
Yep. I can give you an update on that. So after discussing any potential for the county to assist in any way or contribute with the township in an effort to get this road improvement completed, I got a response in writing. It's very lengthy, so I will hit on the bullet points to save you from me reading the whole thing to you. It indicates in the last meeting held between Macomb Township staff and the Macomb County Department of Roads, the requests were prioritized for road improvements in the township. All the requests to expand the current road network to accommodate current and future traffic. The increase of traffic largely due to the increase of housing developments that are converting our agricultural land to subdivisions that require improvements to the township and the county infrastructure. In the existing situation, Macomb County Department of Roads has not even considered the construction of brand-new roads until the recent request of Macomb Township. These have been reviewed and prioritized because there is recognition for the need of more north-south roads through middle of Macomb County. But based on the limited funding, decisions on how to proceed with the projects had to be developed. In conclusion, it should be noted that the past few years and into the foreseeable future, the majority of expenditure of road expansions and new road construction are all in Macomb Township. It's often noted that the Macomb County Department of Roads is not working with the township to improve on our roads. Their forecast of projects show that we're heavy on their schedule of projects going forward. It is in recognition of the traffic problems within our community. This background is provided to better put into perspective the request from the Clinton Macomb Library to add a turn lane on the existing portion of Broughton Road in the future downtown center of Macomb Township. The evaluation of this request was considered in light of the listed priorities and limited funding already established in this document. This request does not assist the movement of residents and manufacturing products within or outside of Macomb County. The request for on-street parking on primary roadways is not something that is allowed on Macomb County Department of Roads maintained roadways. Unless required by funding regulations or specific grant, Macomb County Department of Roads does not do detailed landscaping along roadways. I hope this puts a better light on the process and decisions made by the Macomb County Department of Roads. The Macomb County Department of Roads is supportive of the downtown concept for Macomb Township, but the request for the library was constructed based on the actions and thoughts written in the document. So at this time, they didn't feel that it was reasonable for them to be involved in this project, as their focus and priority right now are on the roadways that help with the infrastructure and traffic congestion in the township.
Any questions?
Well, I just want to comment that I appreciate the follow-up letter that you gave explaining everything.
Madam Chair, I have a couple questions. Sure. So in review of the letter that I received from the supervisor on Monday, in one of the paragraphs, it's indicated that there was never a discussion with library representatives about the purchase of the property by the library until the Township Board's June 26, 2019 meeting, where we were unaware of any appraisal of the value of that property. So you're indicating in that paragraph that there was never a discussion about the purchase of the property by the library. But then on the second page, it indicates on February 4th, 2019, the library sent a letter to the Macomb Township Board reiterating that the library could not pay for any public road installation or improvements. Shortly after we sent this letter on February 4th, 2019, the library was approached about purchasing the land in exchange for the cost of the improvements. The estimated cost of $800,000 for the improvements, as provided by AEW, would have exceeded the value of the property stated at the June 26 Township Board meeting. So in the beginning, it indicates there was never any discussion about purchasing the property, but then in the following paragraph, it says after you sent that letter in February that there was discussion, so I'm kind of confused.
There was no discussion before the township gifted the property to the library. It was subsequent to that there was discussions about purchasing the property, but you had already deeded the property to us, so it would have been an illegal transaction for us to fund anything once we'd already been given the property.
Okay. So when you say we already deeded the property to you, what date was that on?
That was I believe that was in the letter. I think it was in November, your November meeting. Let me look through. You have the,
Signed on March 18th because that was the escrow agreement that was approved. So
Right.
They approved the
Okay.
escrow agreement, but then
Here, you
the
wanna-
deed was,
go ahead and read from the timeline that we have.
Right, I found it in the letter. It says
Okay.
right here. So, the negotiations regarding the escrow agreement occurred in November of 2018. So, the actual deed was given to us at the township meeting on January, in
Yeah,
January?
the January.
Yes, January 23rd, 2019. And then the discussion regarding the purchase of the property didn't occur until our board meeting in February, after it had already been deeded to us.
Okay.
Amy, just for the record, would you identify yourself, please?
Oh, I'm sorry, Amy Willie.
Thank you.
Mr. Sorty, at the last meeting, when we had this discussion about potentially, if there was the opportunity for us to have them purchase the property and then exchange, we use the funds for that to go towards the road improvement, you had said discussions were had with the library board's attorney, and it was indicated that that would never happen. Do you recall when that conversation took place?
No. Not off the top of my head right now.
But
But
there,
I know there were extensive discussions and multiple versions of the escrow agreement that went back and forth.
so I kind of feel like that's contradictory to what they're saying. Is that, so there were discussions had about the purchasing of the property prior to the escrow agreement and deed, are you saying, or no?
Unfortunately, I didn't know we were gonna have these kind of questions, so I didn't bring anything with me to answer that, but there were multiple discussions and meetings. The dates are not, I don't know off the top of my head
Okay.
regarding the escrow agreement.
Ms. Posey, if
Yeah.
I may. I believe the negotiations regarding the escrow agreement were relating to the land reverting back to the township if it ceased to be a library, and the language that both sides were working to find language that was acceptable for both of them, for the property to revert back if it stopped being a library. There was never a discussion about the purchase, and that the negotiations, as we were saying, negotiations was regarding the reversion back to the township if needed.
Okay, thank you for that clarification, because that was unclear. It sounded like there was a discussion had in that the library board's attorney had adamantly said that they would not purchase the property and then allow us to use the funds to maybe go to the possible improvements that the library could not fund.
No, the first time that anything was brought up about the purchase was in that February 19 at our board meeting. All of the previous discussions had been about the donation and then also the reversion back if it ceased to be a library. The other thing that I wanted to clarify, because I think you touched on it and maybe we didn't answer it properly, is there was a number being thrown around of $360,000 as the value of the property, and that wasn't something that came through a formal appraisal that would be required for a purchase. That was just kind of a taxable value or something like that that had been thrown around as a number. There was not a formal appraisal of the land or anything of the like that would give any light on our purchase price.
Okay.
the other thing, when we were working on the escrow agreement, we received one from Macomb Township that was about 30 pages long, and we had then talked about using Clinton Township's escrow agreement that we had worked out, and Tom was agreeable to working with that as a basis. So Clinton Township, there was never any discussion of a purchase of the land in exchange for any road improvements in Clinton Township when they gave us the 9 acres of land for the main library. So that was the basis that we went in with the discussions on this escrow agreement. I'm Larry Neal, the library director.
Thank you. Anything else?
Well, my other question would be, is in the one paragraph, it says, to clarify the library's statements about unanticipated costs, this was in reference to the magnitude of the cost for the roadway and right-of-way expenses, which were only recently obtained by the township. Although we only recently obtained the cost of that from AEW, because I believe there was an estimate given previously that was relatively low in comparison to what we got from AEW. from what I saw in the minutes, it's been a big concern with our planner and our engineer since I can go back as far as October of last year. So with that being a concern, and I know a lot of the concern was that language being removed from the preliminary plans, that it would be done by others, I guess is what the language was.
Correct.
So at that point, is it just your hands were free of it? And the language, I believe, was supposed to be removed. I don't know that it was removed, but who did you think who else would be others?
It would, I don't know. We just knew that by statute, we're not allowed, and we've been consistent on that, and had several letters that we've written to that point that said the library is not able to use those funds for anything other than library property or construction or materials. We're not, by law, we're not able to use the library's tax money as a funding vehicle for any road improvements that do not include the property that we have.
So then explain to me the landscaping that obviously, we've asked that it replicates what we have existing, but wouldn't the landscape and the street lighting and all that be for the library? Because we wouldn't need any of that if the library wasn't there.
Well, that's also, as far as I know, that's consistent with the township's vision for the downtown.
Correct.
Right.
But we're not doing a downtown right now.
Right.
But that's part of it.
Mr. Van Tifflin, can you step in here and explain the town center concept, that no matter what goes in there has to have the landscaping, streetlights, parking?
That is correct. Essentially, what we want to do is replicate what's in front of the rec center on that side to create a downtown feel for this area, both on the township property and somewhat of the property that is to the south of us when that develops.
I understand that part, but my question is that stuff is necessary right now because of the development of the library. So why wouldn't that be an expense to the library development?
Which cost?
The street lights
The
and-
street lighting?
Mhm.
That was in the original.
It's in the right of way. Anything that's not on our property by law, we can't spend money on. So
Okay.
Right.
It's not on our property. Taking the line off from a map or a plan doesn't change the law and what we're allowed to pay for. We consulted with our attorney when the township was asking us to remove the right-of-way line. We consulted with our attorney when we were asked to remove the the work line, and we confirmed with him that it doesn't change the law or our ability to pay for it. I understand the visual. The visual, here's the library building, here's a sidewalk, here are trees, here are streetlights. We totally understand that, but we're not a typical developer, and unfortunately, it would be so much simpler if it could have been part of the project.
Okay. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Yes, Madam Chair. So this is a complicated issue, and it's getting more complicated, it seems, with every letter that we get. We have discussed this as a board. So this right-of-way, these new parking spaces, if you guys can't pay for those, did the library board request those? So can you go ahead with the library without these street modifications? That's an important piece. It seems lately that's been presented that this has to happen for the library to happen. I know the rec center gets a lot of customers every day, and we never had to have a left-hand turn lane down to Broughton for them. And I know Clinton Macomb gets much more, but can the library go forward without a left-hand turn lane or these parking additions?
Yes, we can.
Okay.
My name's Camille Silda. I am both a county employee and a library board trustee, and I want to give Jim kudos for being so thorough in all of his engineering plans. I also want to say that I have a different experience. I'm an urban planner by trade and an economic developer by job, and I understand that in private development, the developer assumes the cost for road widening. We are not a private developer. Just like the township, we are tax-based. We're, stakeholders, but we're limited, as Larry keeps saying. We cannot pay for those things. And do I think that we can go forward without a turn lane? 100% yes. So that was a township request, not a library request. And that's why our board and your board, I think, got the same letter from the road commission, because I also received it Friday morning, as you did, Kathy, too. So I think we're all trying to come to the conclusion of, we want this library, we want to get moving on it. The roadblock, I don't feel, and maybe this is inappropriate of me to say though, is us in that right of way. We're ready to build. So, thank you for your time.
Anyone else?
Madam Chair, one last question. Soil conditions keep coming up. Do you, this is something that, we talked a little bit about as a board, but do you feel this is something that's going to keep coming up and keep coming up and keep coming up? What is the soil conditions that keeps getting put in the letters and the communication?
I think what we wanted to reiterate is you were very generous in giving us this land, but if it were not located in the town center, we would not purchase a piece of property with a wetland that goes right in the center of the property. If it had exceeded 1/3 of an acre, then we would have had to have federal permitting. So we are, worried about what the condition of the soil is, but we've put money for contingency in there. So we just wanted to reiterate the point that until you get the ground opened up and you know what the conditions are, we've had soil borings done, but that's the riskiest part of the project, but we've got contingency built in. So we're not going to be coming back to the township asking you to pay for anything on the site. We have anticipated that. We've worked with our professionals to be able to accommodate that. We're hoping the soil is great that's there, because then we can use that money for other things that will enhance the building even more.
Thank you. Anyone else? Very well. Are there any comments, questions, motions?
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve the request to go ahead and pay for the right-of-way for the improvements for the Clinton Macomb Library.
Motion by Mr. Krasinski,
I will second that motion.
seconded by Ms. Nevers to authorize the payment of the Broughton Road right-of-way improvements.
Madam Chair, if I may request a roll call vote?
Ms. Posey, would you call the roll?
Yes, Madam Supervisor. Trustee Krasinski?
Yes.
Trustee Nevers?
Yes.
Trustee Bussino?
No.
Trustee Smith?
No.
Treasurer Goodhue?
Yes.
Clerk Posey, no. Supervisor Dunn?
Yes.
Motion passed.
That motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. On behalf of the whole library, we really appreciate it.
Under new business, the assessing department is asking to adopt a resolution to waive penalties for non-filing of property tax transfer affidavits. Mr. Hickey.
Thank you, Madam Chair and board members. Michigan law requires the buyer, grantee, or other transferee of property to notify the assessing office of the transfer of ownership of property within 45 days of the transfer. This notification is in the form of a property transfer affidavit. If the affidavit is not timely filed, a penalty should be assessed. Michigan law provides that the governing body of the local taxing collecting unit may waive the penalty by resolution. As the township does not collect this penalty, it is my recommendation that the township adopt a resolution to waive this penalty. Happy for any questions.
Any questions?
Madam Chair, if there's no discussion, I would approve the request by the master assessor of the township.
Support. Motion by Mr. Krasinski, seconded by Ms. Goodhue to adopt the resolution to waive the penalties for non-filing of property transfer affidavits. Ms. Posey, would you call the roll?
Yes, Madam Supervisor. Trustee Krasinski?
Yes.
Treasurer Goodhue?
Yes.
Trustee Bussino?
Yes.
Trustee Nevers?
Yes.
Trustee Smith?
Yes.
Clerk Posey, yes. Supervisor Dunn?
Yes. This resolution is adopted.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, one other thing for Mr. Hickey. I received the new purchase policy that we're still drafting by Ms. Posey. If you could check section 4.2 in disposal of personal property that we received, there's nothing in there. You and I talked about this, that we have to get property appraised by someone other than yourself in order to go ahead and sell it. So if you could look at it under 4.2 and see, possibly add some type of a statement in there that should be done. Okay. And Ms. Posey's working on this, so she's waiting until she gets a purchase, but if you could look at that, would be greatly appreciated.
Actually, Dan, it's Ms. Smith. That's has that document, and you can work with her on that.
Is that who's got it, Smith? All right, but if you can add something in there on the sale, that'd be greatly appreciated.
All right.
Oh,
Thank you.
Stacy Smith. I forgot there's two.
Smith's working on it here.
Stacy.
Stacy, right.
Finance director.
I got it.
The engineering department is requesting to approve pathway abeyance for 56675 Fairchild Road. Mr. Van Tiffelen.
Yes, Madam Chairperson, members of the board. The owner of this particular piece of property is proposing to build a house. This is in the area of Fairchild, between North Avenue and Hagan. There are no sidewalks in this area of the township at all, and an abeyance is appropriate, so we're recommending approval. Be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Van Tiffelen?
Hearing none, I'll make a motion to approve the pathway abeyance for 56675 Fairchild Road, parcel number 0801176002.
Motion by Ms. Posey, supported by Ms. Goodhue, to approve the pathway abeyance as requested. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed by saying nay. That motion carries. And the next one is the pay estimate number 5 for the 21-mile pedestrian bridges. Mr. Van Tiffelen.
Yes, Madam Chairperson, members of the board. We have completed the 2 bridges that were constructed last year. The final restoration work was just recently finished. And we are recommending approval of the final payment certificate, which is number 5, in the amount of $36,419.44 to Z Contractors. Be happy to answer any questions.
Now, this is the final payment?
Final pay certificate.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Mr. Van Tiffelen?
Madam Chair, if there's nothing, I'm motion to approve pay estimate number 5, final for the 21-mile pedestrian bridges, part of the 2016 Pathway Closure Program.
Motion by Mr. Krasinski.
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Posey to approve the pay estimate, the final pay estimate for the pedestrian bridges. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed by saying nay. That motion carries. Next, we have a treasurer's office request to purchase property obtained through the tax reversion process. Ms. Goodhue.
Yes, Madam Chair, at this time, I would like to remove this request, as the county treasurer and myself do want to work with our residents to make sure that they keep their homes. They have been in contact with the resident, and at this time, he's trying to work out something with them. So at this time, I would ask just to have number 12 removed. Thank you.
Is that a motion?
Yes, please.
Motion by Ms.
Support.
Goodhue.
Support.
By Mr. Krasinski to postpone this for.
Remove.
Yes, I'm gonna remove it right now. If it doesn't work out, then I will just put it back on at a later date. We're hoping that it works out.
Okay,
Okay?
fine. Thank you. To the next meeting then.
No, we don't, no, not next meeting.
She's gonna remove it.
You want it
I'm
removed?
gonna remove it, and then if it doesn't work out, I
She'll
will
add
put
it
it back
on.
on. Okay?
All right, we're gonna totally remove it. then.
Yes.
All right. So I don't think we need a motion then.
I don't think so either.
We're gonna remove it.
Yeah,
Well, if we do, I'll second the motion by Ms.
yes.
You got a motion on the floor in a
Remove-
second.
okay.
I'll second it.
All right, motion by Ms. Goodhue, seconded by Mr. Krasinski to remove this from the agenda. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed by saying nay. That motion carries. Thank you. Fire Department has a request to approve extension of time and additional compensation for the general contractor on new public safety building. Chief Phillips.
Madam Supervisor, members of the board, as the owner representative for the new public safety building, I'm requesting your approval for the attached request for extension of time and additional compensation for the general contractor Burnco Incorporated. The request for extension of time and additional compensation is due to the 6-month delay related to the additional stormwater detention system that was required by the Macomb County Department of Roads. The request is allowed per the original contract, and if approved, the funds will be paid from the contingency line item, and there will be no additional costs added to the current construction contract. As it states, there's representatives here this evening from Burnco, and from AEW to answer any questions that you may have. And I've attached AEW's review and recommendation of the request. And I would just like to add that this is not a result of anything that AEW has done or anything that Burnco has done to delay this. This rests solely with the time frame it took to get an answer on the detention system. We've been working on it since June of 2018. We received an answer in December of 2018 as to what was going to be required. We came to the board in January of 2019. You approved the request for AEW to design the system. You approved in May the request to have the work done. And because of that delay, it's resulted in the delay of the construction of the station and the public safety building. And we've got the tariffs that change every single day, the labor costs. And as it states, this is allowed under the contract, and AEW has worked closely to reduce this amount to what has been requested this evening. And with that, I'm requesting your approval first of the extension of time from March 30th, 2020 to October 1st, 2020, and the additional compensation in the amount of $387,445. And with that, the current contingency line item is $707,754. This is approved this evening. That would reduce it $387,445, leaving a remaining balance of the contingency line item of $320,309. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions for Chief Phillips?
Yes, Madam Chair. Chief, in this request and the next request, and to be honest, some other requests that doesn't involve you and your department or this project, it keeps coming up that at the time the contract was awarded, the township had not received direction from the county. This comes up on storm sewers, it comes up on roads. I was able to talk to our county executive today, and he said if there is something we can do to clear up this confusion, this engineering confusion, because what's being communicated to me is not necessarily what's being communicated to me from the county. So he offered to meet with their engineering department, meet with anybody, only because this line keeps coming up, that it's the county's fault, we're not getting direction from the county. And this might even be more of a question to Jim. I mean, is this something we can do and sit down with the county with, a couple members of the board, you sitting there, our county executive department of roads, and see why this keeps coming up? And you understand why I'm asking this, because this line keeps coming up in these letters. It's additional cost. If it just said the project was pushed back because of county, I would understand that. I would go, okay, everybody's dotting their I's and crossing their T's, but the additional cost keeps getting blamed on the county. Our county executive doesn't seem to agree. So
I'm willing to do whatever it takes. This was more of a disagreement about what should be required for this particular site. This site has had open drainage into the Road Commission storm sewer system since the site was built. And now they're requiring us to detain not only the brand new fire station, but everything that's on that site, including the road, which I had never seen before. So yeah, it took a while to try and figure that out. And that's what the delay was about. I saw it as a fairness issue for the township. We're participating with these road projects. We're kicking in a lot of money. The township is driving a lot of these road projects because we're getting input from residents that these things need to be done. We recognize that. So, there was a lot of back and forth. I tried a number of different avenues to get this changed, and ultimately it went the way they wanted it to go. So
it got relayed to me today too when these items come up that they would be willing to send somebody here, just like AEW said they'd answer questions to answer these questions at these moments, because I think it's important. Again, if it was just delays, I'd be okay with it. But every time there's a delay, there's a cost, and the cost is blamed on the county, and nobody hears from the county to answer those questions. They're open to bring somebody here, from my understanding, to answer those questions in the future. So,
anyone else?
Madam Chair, if I may. So based on your numbers, your contingency is being significantly reduced. If some of these increased costs are due to tariffs, I don't know if it was weather or the rain and all that we received in the spring, what guarantee do we have, because we have another year or so before this project is complete, that there's not going to be another type of request like this? Is there any?
I think it's, if the officials from Burnco could answer that.
We can't anticipate that. There's no way we're going to know whether material costs are going to go up, but from our perspective.
Can you come up, please?
Please.
I'm sorry.
That's
From our
State your name for the record, just.
I'm sorry, Bernie Cadavera. I'm the president of the company, and this is Tony Cadavera. He's our project manager. From our perspective, we're going to write change orders to our subcontractors. That's it. And there'll be no reason in our judgment they're going to have to justify to us and AEW and to the fire chief. And we're just not going to anticipate it.
Okay.
We don't like these extra costs. I want you to understand that this is something that is a long delay. We barely got started, barely got out of the ground, and we had to stop. So
I appreciate it. I mean, we've had several projects come before us with the same expenses that have increased due to tariffs and weather delays and of that nature. It's taken a significant amount of the contingency that we have for that project. So my concern is,
we
what happens when
appreciate
it runs
that,
out?
and we've spent some of our own money to clean drains and things like that to try to keep the site as dry as we could. The rain has not helped.
Right.
We had a wonderful period of time in November, December, and January where we could have gotten a lot of our work done, and that was our original schedule. Unfortunately, with the delays, that wasn't allowed to happen.
thank you.
Believe me, we want to be done as badly as you want us done.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, just a question for Jim. When you've met with the county on these new restrictions that they're putting onto us, that building was built there back in the 50s or 60s. Those restrictions were never even thought of at the time. But because of all the water that we're having here, each one of our developments have to have retention ponds. Unbelievable compared to, so no water is going anyplace. They want to keep it onto the property. That's automatically just costs that we have to eat or the developer has to eat. And this is something that's happening to our building here, is that the county is forcing us to do a lot of this stuff so it doesn't come in, doesn't go into their drain system, and it doesn't go into Lake St. Clair. And a lot of people don't seem to realize this. A lot of these engineering things are changing on a continual basis. And I think it's hard for even these guys to say, what are you guys doing here? And it's really amazing. And if you look at, there's some developments that are going on now. How many retention ponds on a 100-acre that we have to put in? 20 acres of retention ponds? Who knows what that number is?
If I may add, drive down Jefferson Avenue between 11 Mile and going north, and there's pumps. I drive that every day, and there's pumps at least 6 places along there pumping water out of the storm sewers back into the lake, because there's no place for it to go other than back into the lake. So it is a problem, and it'll go away like it has in the past, but it is a problem.
Right, and all they're trying to do is correct it right now, that they know they got a problem, so they're gonna try to handle it right now. Maybe 10 years from now, the water will recede, it's gone, and then the lakes will be down 30 inches, 40 inches, and we'll be back the way we were. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Anything else?
Oh, thank you.
Yes, Madam Chair. I got a question. So, we're the only community facing these new restrictions from the county? Are there other communities facing this, or?
I don't know that would.
Do you think so, Jim? I mean, it's not. Is there other communities facing this same?
I assume that the county is applying these standards throughout the county, not just the township.
So based on what just said, local rain impacted this with retention? I'm confused on what was just said, because it said at the time of the contract was awarded, the township had not received direction from the county. This project isn't that old. This is not a 1950s project, right?
Mr. Bussino, I was not referring.
I was
said
talking
that
to Mr.
building-
Van Tifflin.
that building was built in 1950.
I didn't interrupt you. I'm asking Mr. Van Tifflin.
Get your story straight on what I said. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, so I guess my question is, are there other communities facing this now? Like, this is not the first time this has come up in a project, that we've been asked to fund additional funds, and it's being, lack of better words, blamed on a lack of direction from the county. That's a line that keeps coming up. So who didn't see this? We didn't see this. The engineer didn't see it. The county didn't know we were developing on this land. I mean, I'm just confused on who is at the beginning of a project not seeing this, that this was coming.
I think it's a disagreement about how this site should drain, okay? If we weren't doing anything to this fire station, we were just leaving it alone, we wouldn't have to provide detention out there at all. They would come by with their storm sewer, they would hook onto the pipe that's coming out of that site, the 18-inch pipe, and full flow would go into that storm sewer system. What they're saying is they want everything restricted, the entire site, not just the new fire station, but the senior center, the media center, Elma Drive, everything off of that site. That was the trouble that we had, that why are we providing detention for an existing property? And the only reason that they can ask us to do this is because we're building a new fire station. We could have handled the fire station as a separate issue, and that's what we tried to do. They wouldn't agree to that. They said it has to be the entire site. So now we're trying to fit in detention on a site that's already very densely built. Underground was the only way that we could go, and it gets complicated because you're controlling factor is your outlet and your elevation. So there's only so big you can get, and so many pipes that you can oversize to get the detention that is required. And it wasn't just our normal detention requirement; it was a 100-year storm that they wanted. So this was a lot that we were trying to fit into this. I'll say a shoehorn into this small site.
So at the beginning of the project, we didn't see that the county was direct. What you're telling me, I get. You know, people build houses, and there's additional costs that come to a house, right? You know, maybe another permit had to pull. I think we've kind of all been through that. But these additional costs keep being blamed on lack of direction from the county. And that's what I'm saying. I think it's a good idea for, again, at these moments when we're being asked to add cost to our township taxpayers because of something that is being directed as a county decision, I think members of the county should be here and they're open to that. That's what I'm saying. So.
At the start of the project, we knew that there would be some sort of stormwater system required. We didn't have the answers from the county. When the contract was put out for bid, it was discussed at the walkthrough that we were working with the county. It was when the contract was awarded, we were still trying to get answers. We knew that, as I said, there was going to be some sort of system. That's why there was $875,000 contingency, and that's why there was a $360,000 funds included in the project for this underground stormwater detention. That 360 came in at the 420 that was approved in May. So from the project standpoint, we knew that something was going to be required, but we didn't have the answer as to what system. And so that's why we've put the funds, when we were doing the project, in the contingency, including the worst case scenario, which in December we were notified it was the worst case scenario that we're going to have to do.
Thank you. Any other questions from the board? Are there any motions?
Madam Chair, if there's no discussion, I am requesting the approval of the extension of time from March 30, 2020 to October 1st, 2020.
Motion, what about the other part of it?
No, he wants it in two pieces. First, the
Okay.
the dates, and then the other one.
Motion by Mr. Krasinski,
I'll support that.
supported by Ms. Goodhue to approve the extension of time. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed by saying nay.
Nay.
That motion carries. And then the second part would be the compensation for the public safety building.
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion on that, the additional compensation, the amount of the $387,444.
Motion by Mr. Krasinski and
Second.
seconded by Ms. Nevers to approve the additional compensation for the public safety building. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed by saying nay.
Nay.
That motion carries. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you very much.
And then next, we have a request to approve authorization of additional services agreement with Anderson Eckstein Westrick for the same building. Chief Phillips.
Madam Supervisor, members of the board, as just stated, this is in addition to the follow-up, the discussion that just took place with the 6-month delay. AEW is requesting, and the contract that was signed with them does allow under the general conditions that these types of delays result in additional costs, and it is allowed under the contract. And with that, we're requesting that the contract with AEW, that additional services be approved in the amount of $34,320, and as stated previously, this amount will not change the original contract. It will come out of the contingency line item, and that will take the contingency line item for this project to $285,989 if approved. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Chief Phillips?
Chair, hearing none, I would go ahead and make a motion to authorize the additional service agreement with AEW in the amount of $34,320.
Motion by Mr. Krasinski. Support. Supported by Ms. Goodhue to approve the additional services agreement with AEW. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed by saying nay.
Nay.
That motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have a request to approve the job description as presented and proceed with recruiting for a candidate to fill the position of Human Resources Management. Mr. Krasinski or Mr. Sordi, which?
I'll just start it off and then I'll hand it over to Mr. Sordi. There's been some discussion from the audience and to why at this time that I wanted to add a person to the HR department. Number one is that we're kind of short-staffed in that department, and also with all the departments that we have in the township, there are approximately 12 different positions that directors have. They have at least one or two people have them underneath them. And I just felt it was time for us to have an assistant for the HR manager. Also, there seems to be some discussion of whether or not whether it being a union or non-union job. Because of the sensitivity that this person will have, it has to be a non-union job. And so on that particular position, I would hand that over to legal to answer that.
Mr. Sordi.
Madam Chair and members of the board, when I was asked to put this together, I evaluated what we did take a look at, and I just want to be clear about one thing. At no time did I ever conduct a manpower study. I don't know where that term came from or where the reference is, but me or the Human Resources Department, since I've been here, has never conducted a manpower study. But with that, with the development of the job description, including participating in the grievance procedure from the management side, I felt that the individual would not fit in the definition of the bargaining unit. Obviously, we have a lot of employees here that are not in the AFSCME management union. So this is the first I've heard of it. We put this out a week ago. I haven't been contacted by the union, nor none of the elected officials have contacted me and indicated that they were contacted by the union to discuss this. I'm used to, if the union has a problem or an issue regarding an alleged unfair labor practice, that we negotiate and discuss that. I'd be happy to do that. If there was in fact a ruling from Merck as referenced, I'm not familiar with the process of how that happens from one side without both sides being involved, but I'd be happy to get information from Mr. Martin on that as he referenced a ruling. But if they have if the union has concerns, absolutely, I'd be more than happy to sit down. That's what we typically do with the union when there's whatever union it is, if there's a problem or concern with an action that we're taking. But I can't do that if there's no communication about that until a board meeting.
Thank you. Mr. Krasinski, would you want to postpone this to give
Nope.
a chance?
No, I don't. I'll just go ahead and make the motion.
Wait, I would like to.
Well,
I
then
have some
why,
questions.
I'm waiting on you, Ms. Posey. What are you gonna do?
Well, I'm gonna ask some questions.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. So there wasn't, you referenced there was no manpower study, but I believe you called it an HR audit, correct?
Correct. I conducted an audit of, an HR audit, which is a review of each of the departments in conjunction with each of the department heads to evaluate the needs of each department.
Okay. I didn't find anything in the audit with regards to the Human Resources Department. I just,
Again, it's upstairs in my drawer. I can.
okay. So I'm just saying, because in
So,
the minutes, it does reference that we would be updated on the audit if there was a change to a department, and I couldn't find anything on the HR department.
Well, any change to the audit
Yeah,
regarding the change to the
to
audit?
the need that was
Right,
rejected
yeah.
a year ago. So I just wanted to let you know that I couldn't locate anything on
Well,
that.
I think we're starting from an assumption that there's nothing in the audit referencing that, and I don't agree with that. If you look at the audit, it's referenced to the fact that before I came here, there were 2 management personnel in the department. Shortly thereafter, there was 1 person in it, and I don't have the audit in front of me, but I'm pretty confident the audit references the fact that we would continue to evaluate the staffing of the department and evaluate it from that perspective, if that included. So that was my intent of where it was. So to suggest it's not referenced is not my understanding of the audit that was done.
Okay. So also that you indicate in the compensation for this position that it was comparable to township wages and the review of local areas. So which areas was it compared to?
Well, when I referenced it compared to local areas, I foremost looked at the compensation schedule in all respect to, which I think is by far the most important, our management personnel here under the AFSCME contract.
Mm-hmm.
That was my starting point for the majority of that, and there were certain, obviously we're all aware of the certain pay scales within that contract that was taken from there.
Okay. So in the management contract that we just updated, I was looking at it as well. And it appears that most of our managers, after the negotiations were finalized, in 2019, their wage would range majority, if not all, at $80,000. So your range starts at 80 and maxes out at 91.
Right, so I'll tell you that the range that's in there, in addition to using the contract, which was the #1 factor with all respect to our department heads and others in the AFSCME unit, I pulled information from the Bureau of Labor Statistics for Occupation and Employment Statistics that had all kinds of information in there. We pulled a bunch of information from several of the positions available on the internet, what's there through companies like Glassdoor, those types of things. And those kind of ranges, a human resources director, for instance, at Ford Motor Company, human resources manager at Ford Motor Company or GM, you're looking at $127,000, $138,000 a year versus that type of position, for instance, at Macy's or Home Depot, that type of thing, or 51 to, no, that's even low, but 60 to 70,000.
Well, I guess my concern is that we have a records manager, we have elections manager, engineer manager, facilities and grounds manager, and IT manager, and all of them are at 80,000. So, I mean, I understand you might have looked at, at those websites and stuff, but our current managers aren't making that.
Can I say something? No, the records manager is not at 80,000, he's at 83,000, 38.
Current wage?
Yeah, that's for 2018. The 2019 number is 83,000. So this number is actually lower than anybody that's in that position now.
Okay, but my concern is that the range, how do we decide then on the range?
The range is based on the information from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the information from, Glassdoor, those types of places, as well as, probably most importantly, the ASME contract. So it's actually in some points less than some people that are identified, whose position description includes the word manager, and it's not as high of or more than the position above that, which would be the director level.
And then who makes the determination on where they fall into this range?
The board would.
Okay, after interviews and
Correct.
experience?
Yep.
Okay, my other question is for Mr. Krasinski. When I was looking to move an employee in my department from coordinator to supervisor, you specifically wanted to ask me what new responsibilities he'd be taking on, and how it was different from the job description of coordinator to supervisor. Could you do the same for me, please, on this position?
No, I can't, because you could have called me on that. I don't know why you didn't call me.
Because I'm asking you right now.
Well, I can't answer it. I really can't.
Okay. Because I compared the, Mr. Assorti's agreement with what the job description is, and it's almost identical. So what would Mr. Assorti, what will you be doing if they're doing all this for HR?
I will tell you that I respectfully disagree with you that description is exactly the same as my description.
I said almost. It's very extremely similar in if we go through line items.
And I would suggest that it's very similar to the human resources specialist position as well, because of the function of what we do.
Okay, so then you will just be overseeing this person then, because they will be taking on majority of the responsibilities that are in your current agreement, it looks like.
It was not my intention at any point that these people take over those responsibilities. Those would be my responsibilities as outlined in my contract. The responsibilities of the human resource specialist would remain her responsibilities, including reporting to me, as well as this individual reporting to me. The idea behind what was drafted was some of the issues, for instance, participating in the grievance process so that we could do that. And I know there was a lot of concern about participation in reports under anti-discrimination policy. This individual would, under certain circumstances, fill that need.
I guess my last question is, I have specifically asked you if, since the combination of the two positions and since you've worked in it for almost 3 years, if you felt that the combination was too much for one person to handle, and you had indicated absolutely not. Also, in 2017, when this idea was proposed, it was indicated that you wouldn't require additional staff and that you could do both positions as long as you were in-house full-time. So obviously that's changed. And
when the statement was made about, there were 2 management personnel within that department at that time.
Barb was retired at that time. Or shortly after.
I understand,
we had anticipated her retirement.
But the budget remained in that position, and the audit indicated that the plan was to evaluate the need for people within that portion. I don't think at any point that we determined that Barb's position would just go away once she retired. If it did,
If I recall, the conversation is that you wouldn't need somebody with Barb's experience or at that dollar amount. You wouldn't need to replace it, but that's my recollection of the conversation.
for benefits administration, correct?
Yeah, okay. That's all I have.
Madam Chair, I'd like to ask if we can postpone this so Mr. Assorti gets a chance to talk with the union to make sure there's not any issues with the MERC. If they're saying that there's only 2 that are allowed, I would prefer we make sure all that's cleared up before we vote.
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion to postpone this till our next meeting, which is July 24th.
Motion by Mr. Busnell,
Support.
supported by Ms. Smith. to postpone this to the next meeting of July 24th. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Can I have a roll call vote on that, please?
Ms. Posey, would you call the roll?
Yes, Madam Supervisor. Trustee Bussino?
Yes.
Trustee Smith?
Yes.
Trustee Krzminski?
No.
Trustee Nevers?
No.
Treasurer Goodhue?
No.
Clerk Posey, yes, and Supervisor Dunn.
No.
Then, Madam Chair, I got another question since that motion failed. I just want to ask our HR General Counsel Director if he thinks it's good practice for trustees to recommend the addition of positions in the township. Since I've been on this board, I know Madam Supervisor, as a full-time elected official, has made recommendations, and I think that they're department heads. I know Ms. Posey has made recommendations. I don't think Ms. Goodhue has since I've been on the board, but if you have, I can't recall a time where you asked for a position. So are we going to set a precedence that trustees can ask for positions addition, or can we ask for the elimination of positions? Is this something our trustees, and I'm confused at why this didn't come from you. I'm really confused why this recommendation to your department, Ms. Posey asked for elections coordinator, elections manager, sorry if I don't get the titles right. Our supervisor asked for a deputy supervisor. I don't understand why you didn't ask for this position.
Madam Chair, if I may, I just felt at the time, Mr. Bussino, times have changed. Things have happened within the township, and I just thought I'd make the presentation of adding an employee to the department that's shorthanded right now. And I looked at the full scope of everybody that's in this township that have deputies and have assistants and everything else. That was the basis for it. Nothing more than that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, Madam Chair, so we can ask for addition or elimination of positions as trustees. I can look out and say if our community is not happy with the position, I can ask for that position to be eliminated now as a trustee.
What are you talking about, Tim?
I think everybody knows what I'm talking about.
No, what are you talking about, Tim? What are you eliminating?
Since I've been on this board, you've never asked for any department except outside of maybe public safety because you're on the committee, because you're on the sheriff's committee, maybe. So trustees now are going to put on the agenda, the trustees now are going to put in the agenda, the trustees now are going to look out, talk to department heads and see, are we going to add or eliminate positions? That's, you put it on the agenda today. I'm confused on why you put this on the agenda.
Don't be confused, Tim. First of all, I'm not on some sheriff's, what are you talking, a sheriff's deal? What's a sheriff's deal you're talking about?
I was talking about the only time that you might have had a hand in hiring somebody is when you were on the committee to hire sheriffs.
Never was on that committee.
Yes, you were, with Ms. Posey and Mr. Bucci, I believe. Yes, you were. 100% you were. I'll find that page for you later.
Oh, please do. Please do.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
When I was talking with the employees here, the department heads, as requested by the union and the signatures, I received information from them that they were not getting things done because of all the things that Mr. Assorti had to do. He's been bombarded by FOIAs, he's been bombarded by the legal aspects of everything that we have to do. His description changed. Everybody said to me they didn't have a problem with Tom except for that he wasn't getting things done. So I thought of this idea. I went to Mr. Krzminski and Ms. Dunn, and we discussed it. There was also a problem with when there was a grievance, and it involved Mr. Assorti, that there was nobody in the middle. So this will take care of that problem as well. So this was a suggestion, and Mr. Krzminski ran with it.
Anyone else?
Madam Supervisor, I just want to make a correction. It doesn't correct that problem if the grievance involves the actual HR director. So the person reporting to the HR director cannot do an investigation on his department head. So that doesn't solve that problem. We would still have to get outside legal counsel. Just to clarify.
Anyone else?
There is a process in the grievance procedure, and that is what should be followed.
I understand that, but how does a subordinate investigate their boss?
I don't think they investigate. They sit there and they listen to the grievance.
Well, that's the problem, is that we don't do the investigations around here, in my opinion.
Mine too.
Anyone else?
Madam Chair, if there's no further discussion, I would move to approve the new job description as presented.
Motion by Mr. Krasinski,
I'll second that.
supported by Ms. Nevers to
Yes.
approve the job description as presented.
Roll call vote, please.
Ms. Posey, would you call the roll?
Did you make the motion?
Krasinski.
Okay. Trustee Krizminski?
Yes.
Trustee Nevers?
Yes.
Trustee Bustineau?
No.
Trustee Smith?
No.
Treasurer Goodhue?
Yes.
Clerk Posey, no. Supervisor Dunn?
Yes. And the count was?
Madam Chair, there's one other issue yet. With the job description, I'd like,
One second. Go ahead.
It passed.
That motion carried. Now, you had another motion?
yes, to start the recruitment process to fill the position of the Human Resources Manager through either
Motion by-
LinkedIn or whatever process we do. Make that in the form of a motion.
Motion by Mr. Krasinski,
I'll second that.
seconded by Ms. Nevers to proceed with recruiting for a candidate to fill the position of Human Resources Manager. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Roll
Aye.
call vote, please. Madam
Roll
Chair, I'm
call,
sorry.
please.
Roll call vote.
Trustee Krizminski?
Yes.
Trustee Nevers?
Yes.
Trustee Bustineau?
No.
Trustee Smith?
No.
Treasurer Goodhue?
Yes.
Clerk Posey, no. Supervisor Dunn?
Yes, that motion carries also. Next, we have the add-on of the item that Mr. Fusno wanted pulled from the bill run.
Yes, Madam Chair. Looking at the second bill we received from Nemeth Law in regards to some employee situations that our general counsel felt like he had to go outside and get help with, again. There are some things on this bill that I just, maybe don't understand legal billing, but I want to understand, the biggest one that stands out to me, and it's not the only one, is we got billed for 5.3 hours for this attorney to attend our township board meeting. I was there that night. The meeting started at 7. 5.3 hours would take us into 12:30. I think we left about 10:45 that night. Let's say, and I'm going to continue my conversation by looking at this bill. Let's say the attorney came at 6. We still weren't here till 11:30. I don't know why the attorney would have to come at 6, because other parts of this bill is $137 to meet with Thomas Sorty before the board meeting, $385 by reviewing confidential investigative reports and drafting talking points for closed session with the board. Then there's a $55 bill for this attorney to meet with another attorney in her office to discuss strategy for appearance at the meeting. I don't know why 2 lawyers would be discussing strategy outside of closed session. That should be up to our township board that's been elected by residents. But anyway, I want to go back to this first item that I mentioned. How does this attorney bill us for 5.3 hours? And again, considering all these other things that we got billed for other preparations before the meeting, if our meeting starts at 7 o'clock, and I would like to add because this board doesn't have a lot of latitude to make decisions about who gets appointed or what legal counsel gets appointed and retained because of our legal counsel's contract. But if there is somebody that is going to bill us $275 an hour to sit at our meeting, I suggest at that moment that closed session goes first and let that attorney go home. But having said that, our meetings start at 7 o'clock. We were not here to 12:30 that night. How did that attorney bill us for 5.3 hours?
Anyone have any questions?
I believe Mr. Busno has a question on the floor.
No, I'm trying to ask our legal counsel on, do you think it's fair that an attorney, when our meeting's starting at 7, bill us for 5.3 hours, would bring us into the next day, 12:30? I think we were out of there a little before 11 that night.
Typically with professionals, including others other than attorneys, the travel time, the time that they're away, that they're spending associated with the thing is included in that. I felt it appropriate when I signed off on it. If you have a problem with it, it's been up for a week. Nobody has identified any issues with me. I'd be happy to meet with the 3 elected officials and Ms. Gaddy and talk about the bill if that's a concern. But
Following up to that question, based on what we know that was recommended to us in closed session, couldn't it have just been a written opinion that was read in closed session? Also, she also did charge us for traveling from Grosse Ile.
Anybody?
Madam Supervisor, if I may, the important part of this whole thing is that without any approval from the board, there was $9,000 spent on an investigation done on an entry-level employee. That's astronomical, and I think it is careless. And if it was presented to me as a board member, just as any other department head has to come to that podium if it's over $5,000 and anticipates a project over $5,000, they have to present it to us. So let's pretend that's happened, and Mr. Assorti brings to the board that there's this potential investigation and what he feels to be the problem at hand. And past practice has been that a department head and the HR director do the investigation and come to a conclusion. For whatever reasons, he didn't find that would work, so he wanted to use outside legal counsel, and it was going to total this township $9,000. I, as a board member, would have voted no and agreed that the department head and the HR director conduct the investigation as has been done in past practice. I mean, we're not even investigating directors or anybody higher than an entry-level position with outside legal counsel at the expense of $9,000. So I just think it's excessive. I think it should go before the board. And that we should have to agree or disagree to spend that kind of money on outside legal counsel.
Ms. Goodhue?
Madam Chair, I would like to make a motion that we postpone or not pay this bill at this time, and the 3 elected officials, full-time elected officials, meet with Mr. Assorti to discuss this.
Okay, motion by Ms. Goodhue,
Support.
supported by Mr. Krasinski to postpone for 2 weeks?
Yes.
To the next meeting, contingent upon the 3 full-time elected officials meet with Mr. Assorti. Correct. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed by saying nay. That motion carries. Thank you. Water and Sewer Department has a request to approve the reimbursement of 3 different homes which were affected by the sanitary sewer backups. Mr. Wanglund.
Thank you, Supervisor Dunn and board members. Tonight, Water and Sewer is in front of you requesting that we reimburse these 3 homeowners listed in the memo for the various amounts. The sewer backup, as I stated a couple weeks ago, was not the township's fault. This was the fault of the contractor working on the Stillwater subdivision, which is directly across the road. I'm recommending we approve these 3 homeowners in this amount, with the stipulation that each homeowner sign the release of claim form as stated in the memo.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, since this is an administrative one, I would go with the first. You want me to list the address?
I think they should.
First address is 24760 Arrowhead Drive. in the amount of $7,068.13. Move to pay the bill and have the person sign a release from the township.
Motion by Mr. Krasinski,
Support.
supported by Ms. Goodhue, to approve the reimbursement request. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed by saying nay. That motion carries. Thank you.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion on the second parcel, which is on 50457 Pinnacle Woods Lane, in the amount of $29,114.80, and have the homeowner release the township from the bill.
Motion by Mr. Krasinski,
Support.
supported by Ms. Goodhue, to approve the request for reimbursement for 50457 Pinnacle Woods. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed by saying nay.
And the third parcel, Madam Chair, is 50472 Pinnacle Woods in the amount of $103.08, and also have the homeowner give it release to the township.
Motion by Mr. Krasinski,
Support.
supported by Ms. Goodhue, to authorize the reimbursement for 50472 Pinnacle Woods Lane. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed by saying nay. That motion carries. And the
Supervisor
next
Dunn.
one is.
Supervisor Dunn,
I'm
if
sorry.
I might add, this is the final piece of this puzzle, and now we'll be moving forward with invoicing the contractor for the various bills that we've approved here in the last 2-3 meetings, and we can put some closure to this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have a request to pay construction pay estimate number 1. This is sanitary sewer rehabilitation, lining of the sewer, and this is from AEW Project 0249-0163. Mr. Wangland.
Thank you, Supervisor Dunn and board members. Tonight, Water and Sewer is in front of you requesting we approve pay cert number 1 to Incitriform Technologies in the amount of $45,546.84. Water and Sewer, as well as engineering, has reviewed this, and we are recommending we move forward on this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions? Any motions?
Madam, who's starting? Is it you, Posey, or who?
I was gonna
Go ahead.
start. I'll make a motion to approve the pay construction pay estimate number 2 for the 2019 sanitary sewer cleaning NCTV.
No. Number 1. We're on 17. You said number 2.
Okay. I'm reading from here, so.
Just read this from here.
That one? Oh, okay. Oh, okay. Number 1. All right. Sorry, I already wrote that one. All right. Number 1, 2019 sanitary sewer rehabilitation by FCIPP and SCIPP lining AEW project number 0249-0163.
Thank you. Motion by Ms. Goodhue,
Second.
seconded by Ms. Posey, to approve the pay estimate as requested. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed by saying nay. That motion carries. Next one is to pay construction estimate number 2. Mr. Wangland.
Thank you, Supervisor Dunn and board members. Water and Sewer is requesting we pay cert number 2 to Pipe Tech Infrastructure Services in the amount of $63,082.45. Water and Sewer, as well as engineering, has reviewed this, and we are recommending we move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Wangland on pay estimate number 2?
Hearing none, I'll make a motion to pay construction pay estimate number 2, 2019 sanitary sewer cleaning CCTV investigation AEW project number 0249-0162.
Motion by Ms. Posey,
Support.
supported by Ms. Nevers, to approve construction pay estimate number 2 as requested. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed by saying nay. That motion carries.
Thank you, board.
Number 19 has been postponed until July 24. And number 20 is General Counsel, and this is a request to authorize the supervisor to execute the Metro Act right-of-way permit extension. Mr. Sordi.
Madam Chair and members of the board, as we indicated at the last meeting, this is similar to the last request. From a municipal standpoint, there's little we can do with regard to these permits. They do go through the MPSC through the requester. So this is for Crown Castle to maintain and operate their fiber throughout the township. This is all within the public right-of-way. There's nothing different than anything that's down there. This agreement's already in place. This is for a 5-year extension.
Thank you. Any questions about this right-of-way permit?
Madam Chair, hearing none, I would move on to execute the right-of-way permit extension on behalf of the township. Supervisor signed it from 7/17/19 to 7/17/24.
Motion by Mr. Krasinski,
Support.
ordered by Ms. Goodhue, to authorize the supervisor to execute this permit extension. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed by saying nay. That motion carries. Next, we have public comments. This is on non-agenda items only. Please come to the podium, state your name. Remember, there's a 3-minute time limit.
Again, I'm Dennis Martin from ASME 1917. Tonight, the management union would like to express their disappointment in all the non-actions taken by 4 members of this board. On April 15th, one of our members had an unpleasant encounter with her department head, the HR director, that led to a grievance being filed. This past Monday, the employee returned to work in virtually the same situation as when she had left. Not one thing has changed. The first step of the grievance was waived because it was about the department head. The second step was denied by the township supervisor. The third step was removed from the agenda in violation of the collective bargaining agreement. And now the matter has been turned over to the arbitration department and has been submitted. More than 2 months passed before the township conducted its first interview or investigation on the matter, and this was only done because some of the board members were relentless in trying to have the matter addressed. In May, 2 key management employees resigned. Both informed the board the poor work environment that exists at Town Hall. Our management union also presented a letter signed by 22 members stating that they believed the combining of the HR and legal position was a conflict of interest and being prohibited to the orderly operations of the township. Since then, nothing has been done with the exception of tonight's agenda, well, rather than addressing the situation in a manner that would help resolve the conflict of interest, you are creating more issues for yourself and potential litigation. Ms. Goodhue, Ms. Nevers, and Mr. Kaminsky all said they would speak to every employee who signed the letter. My understanding that this has not been completed. While it may be understandable that not everyone has been met with, have meetings ever even been scheduled? In speaking with our membership, it would appear that only less than a handful of people have been met with. A problem exists and will never go away until you separate the position of HR director and legal counsel. It really doesn't matter how many employees you give Mr. Assorti, it won't solve the problem. As Ms. Nevers said last meeting, no man shall serve 2 masters. We urge you to investigate how many communities combine these 2 positions rather than just taking Mr. Assorti's word for it. For whatever reason, certain members on this board refuse to acknowledge the concern of the employees. We are aware that this situation probably won't change much until next year's election. After discussion with the leadership of the other unions, ASME 1917 as well as MAPE and the IAFF will all be working hard together to promote positive changes in 2020.
This was going to be part of my comments this evening, but since you brought it up, at a previous board meeting, which obviously you were not present, the Board of Trustees authorized myself to hire an outside attorney in regards to the grievance. Several names were supplied to me by Ms. Smith, who happens to work for the county prosecution department, or a judge, I'm sorry, and I contacted 3 of them. One of them agreed. This person will, authorize the supervisor to hire an outside attorney in regards to the grievance filed by an employee concerning the HR director's interaction with the staff. This attorney asked for information, which I supplied to him. Interviews of all HR department personnel were conducted on Monday, this past Monday, and I am awaiting his response. So most of your statements were inaccurate. If you would have
No,
called
they
me, I
weren't.
would have told
No,
you.
they weren't.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Paul Jerry, address is on file. I'm bringing this to the board Supervisor Dunn's attention and Treasurer Karen's attention, being that you 2 are supposed to be watching the cash registers. It was posted online that Mr. Dino Bucci's driveway got replaced, fully replaced, with no permits being pulled, fees being paid, or inspections being done. That's a form of stealing from the township. If you can't collect fees from him, how do you expect to collect fees from any other resident in the township that has to do work around their house? Now that you brought this to your attention and the board members, I expect you to assign someone to follow up whether it was pulled or whether it wasn't pulled, whether fees were paid or whether the fees weren't paid. It's stealing from the township. He's still stealing from the township. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Frank Kuzma, 16188 Jenny Drive. I would say to the board members, the majority that has been voting, that what you did tonight even shocked the hell out of me, which is really surprising given what I've seen over my 30 years of practice of law. It's among other things, little things. Ms. Goodhue, on agenda item number 12, why wasn't it removed for when the chair requested any deletions, modifications, or amendments? Other members of the board were making changes to the agenda. Then the item gets called in the normal order of business, and you ask for it to be removed. Did something change in between? Did you have that communication with Larry Roca's office while you were sitting there in between the agenda being approved and not? What does this episode project on your preparedness, your competence, and isn't it an embarrassment to the township? Roger Krasinski, you mentioned everything from climate change to things are changing, but don't offer any perspective on how these cost overruns and the eating away of these contingencies would be solved, or any aspect of that problem to be moving forward, which I think you ran on that, moving the township forward. Then when I asked a direct question, you said, I can't answer that. Thank you to Trustee Bussino for asking questions. These votes without questions indicate that, or would indicate or suggest that there's board members meeting and deliberating over these issues, since there's no questions being asked and then rotely voting yes on the matters, especially matters regarding Mr. Assorti's contract. It keeps happening over and over again. Clerk Posey, thank you for pointing out your criticisms of what the Gang of Four has been doing. It was suggested that Mr. Assorti's too busy to do his work. That's the reason why he's falling behind. It's mentioned he's been inundated with FOIA requests. I did a FOIA request regarding the trumpeting by Mrs. Goodhue to the media of the recovery of the $66,000. I'm still waiting for a response. I'm told, well, you know the way Assorti is. I'm looking forward to the election cycle so that there will be no more blank checks written to legal firms at the expense of the taxpayers. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Kathy Western. Ms. Goodhue, to recap, what you said inspired you to seek out an additional position for Thomas Sorty's office was employees telling you that he didn't get his work done. Then you went to Mr. Krasminski, then Ms. Dunn, and Mr. Krasminski, quote, ran with it. And you described him as Thomas Sorty as being bombarded by the work volume, being bombarded by FOIAs, and which compels me to remind you that FOIAs are handled by the clerk's office. Last year, at the request of the supervisor, this board adopted a resolution stating that an individual board member is not authorized to speak on behalf of the board without the expressed authorization of the board, and if they did so, they would be in violation of this resolution. In a recent article in the Gazette newspaper, Treasurer Karen Goodhue felt free to not only reinterpret the motivations of employees who recently resigned, but to explain why remaining employees have been complaining about the actions of Thomas Sorty. Now, she doesn't describe, as she did tonight, that the employees complained that his being behind in his work affected their work life, but you explained to the reporter this is why they're complaining. Quote, "We just got done with union negotiations. Tom is tough." End quote. So I think that Treasurer Goodhue was speaking for the board when she explained why you hired Thomas Sorty. She said, quote, "He's tough and that's why we hired him." Good to know. You hired him because he's tough, and that is what you wanted. I commented a while back that your new video on the township website for job recruitment does not match the reality of what one goes through when one applies for a job. And I think we can extend that disconnect now to the mission statement on the township website about human resources. Your website says the mission of human resources is to promote an environment that is characterized by fair and consistent treatment of all employees, open communications, personal accountability, trust, and mutual respect, end quote. But as we heard in a dramatic fashion, there's a huge disconnect between HR, this board, and the employees. But Ms. Goodhue, you got what you wanted. Now, as far as his being behind in his work affecting other people, I think, Ms. Goodhue, it was 18 months ago that you announced that your project would be a social media policy. And then when I questioned you about it a year ago, you said you were still working with Mr. Assorti on that. And then last September, when you last brought it up, you said you were still working with Mr. Assorti on that. So perhaps employees are not the only ones affected by his inability to get his work done. Thank you.
Marilyn Holloway, 19547 Pinecone. Sorry, I just wanted to say a couple of things. Mr. Tim, Ms. Posey, thank you very much, because you seem to be the only ones that stand up and question anything that's put forth before this board. The rest of you, Mr. Krasminski, we could use a little button that says, Madam Chairman, let's pass it. Same thing with Ms. Nevers. Nothing that comes before you ever seems to be discussed. I know I'm reiterating what someone else has said. But so far, I've seen two of you that actually stand up against the rest to question. The rest of you just go ahead. Here's the township purse. How much do you want? We can have the library move forward, but hey, you want close to $1 million so that we can play around with the street, and it's not necessary. An HR position, sorry, Ms. Goodhue, you kind of showed your ignorance as to how that works when you said someone who works for the director can investigate a grievance against him. It's not going to happen. You should know that. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the board. I would just like to make a correction to a statement that was made by one of the residents regarding the permit that was not pulled for a driveway in the township at a reference property. On Monday, there was a permit applied for and pulled for the driveway. It was paid for in full, and there were inspections done yesterday on that project. So just want to let the board and the residents know that.
Thank you, Mr. Maples.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Very well, we'll move on then to trustees' comments.
Yes, Madam Chair, real quick. Tonight I don't have a lot to say. I just want to thank all the residents that come forward to offer their opinion, to offer support. It may not appear that way, that change is happening, but it is. And the change going forward is going to happen. It's not always easy to question everything up here all the time. I've been doing it for about 3 years now. I've said there's a day, hopefully, that I don't have to do that. But I can tell you, I love my community. I love Macomb Township. I chose to live here, and I will fight for you. I will fight for the residents, and I won't stop. Thanks.
Anyone else?
Yes, Madam Chair,
Trustees.
if I may, Mr. Martin, I indicated that I would speak to all of the people who signed the letter. I regret that I haven't been able to get through that list to complete that assignment. I have been working diligently on the ethics ordinance. That has taken up a lot of my time. Then we had 4th of July. So my commitment will be next week. I will be talking to the remainder of the people that have signed that letter, and I'm sorry I've been so delayed in that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, if I may. Being that the road for the library was approved tonight, I would like to suggest to Madam Chair, for her vision, for the other piece of the property to create a subcommittee for a community center. A little bit of history. If the township had received the court back 5 or 6 years ago, Broughton Road would have already been in and probably at a lower cost. The last piece would have been the library, and the downtown would have been created already. Madam Chair, this subcommittee will look at creating a community center and how it would function and what would be the costs. This committee, once it's created, would present their findings to this board. If you could bring back possibly in the 4th quarter would be awesome. This would be the last piece for the downtown district that was envisioned years ago in the late 90s. It might even start talks with the Department of Roads for the county to put in Broughton Road. This library will generate cars coming into the complex and possibly other developments to spring forward. The last comment I'd like to make, this is my own personal opinion. I was disappointed with the no votes of this board tonight, especially on the library. It seems by your vote, you did not want the township to create a complex that has been envisioned for years for this township to grow and have a downtown district. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Ms. Smith? I have nothing. Treasurer's comments?
First, I would like to address Mr. Cusmano about why the number 12 was not removed. I mulled it over in my mind as to what to do, but I was giving credence to Mr. Rocca, the county treasurer, that he is willing to work with residents to keep their homes, as well as I. And I felt that the residents needed to know that, and that's why I removed it at that time. Thank you. As far as Ms. Western, I'm sorry that my words were misconstrued from the reporter. But it was I wouldn't say anything that I wouldn't say to you face to face as well. I work here every day. I have issues to go to Mr. Assorti with, and I know how busy he is. I'm not saying he can't get his work done. He has created a lot of things. He's worked on a lot of things with us that you don't probably see. But he does need help, and I'm sorry. That's how I feel. Then to my other comments. A board member is expected to do a due diligence investigation into matters brought before them. I have been doing a lot of research on the ethics ordinance from the beginning and had some concerns, as did Ms. Nevers. So we met with legal counsel and then reached out to the committee chair to discuss. We found our first meeting very insightful and decided to meet again. 5 of the ethics committee members met with legal counsel and members of the board. Myself, Ms. Nevers, Mr. Bussinow was invited and expected but was not present, so Ms. Posey attended in his absence to make sure the ordinance meets legal standards. The meeting was very beneficial for all attendees, and we have a plan to finalize the ordinance and bring it to the board for approval. We expect to meet one more time at least to go over the final draft. Then there are some facts that I would like to share with the residents as well. The representative from the management unit came to the podium at the last meeting and stated that the human resource director / legal counsel did not follow the pre-hiring requirements that the employees need to follow. It has been the practice of the township that when a contracted employee is hired into the township, they forego those requirements. This was also the case with the township engineers and the planning director. Correct. They have already established their history with the township, and the township feels they do not need to incur the expense of those requirements. As Mr. Assorti was our legal counsel for a few years, he also did not need to follow those requirements.
Thank you. Ms. Posey.
Thank you. I just want to remind the residents that Macomb County Clerk's Office will be in Town Hall tomorrow from 10 to 2. They are offering their services that are offered in downtown Mount Clemens to our residents in Macomb Township to save them the trip of going downtown. On behalf of Mr. Krasinski's comment, and it was his opinion, but I would like to say that I'm all for downtown. I'm all for the development in this area, but I want to do it at the most efficient and economic value to the township and the taxpayers. I just would like to make a comment. There was a lot of head shaking going on. Is Mr. Van Tiffelen, were you not required to take the prerequisites for employment?
I went through all of that.
The screening, the drug test, the psychological exam?
Yes, I was required to do it.
Okay.
Yep.
That's all. Thank you.
Then I stand corrected.
Thank you. I only have one
Madam
comment.
Chair, if I may,
since
one,
already
for the
commented.
clerk? Madam Chair?
Yeah.
One item. For the clerk, are you going to be at the grounds tomorrow? Are you going to have your booth there to sign them for absentee?
Yes.
You want to bring that up?
Yes, thank you. Also, as a service to the residents, if you're interested, if you happen to attend our concerts in the park, we have a table set up that if you would like to sign up to be on our no reason mail-in voting list, this is a convenience to residents to avoid going to polling locations. Also, you can sign up. We're always recruiting election workers. And also, we can register you to vote if you haven't done so already. So we will have a table at the concert for your convenience if you wanted to be added to any of those lists. Thank you for the reminder.
Madam Chair, I'm sorry I interrupted, but I thought just to give her that shout out.
Madam Chair, since we can respond after our comments, Ms. Goodhue.
I'm sorry.
No, you just allowed Mr.
It's my
Krasinski to
turn.
do it. You just allowed Mr. Krasinski to do it.
Point of
I want to
order, Mr.
respond.
Point of order.
You just allowed Mr. Krasinski to talk up. Unbelievable. Karen, you said more things.
Is a comment on the
She took a cheap shot at me, and you know it, and you won't let me respond.
This is a comment that I have been asked to make about water irrigating. Macomb Township some time ago enacted a water sprinkling ordinance. The intent of this ordinance was to reduce the amount of water consumption during peak hours. This would, over time, reduce our water charges from Detroit. As of now, too many water accounts are disregarding the notices left with the homeowner in the form of door hangers or the shut-offs at the entrances of subdivisions. The Water and Sewer Department will be issuing irrigation violation notices, and the township attorney will be amending the ordinance to indicate that non-compliance will constitute a civil infraction with penalties not to exceed $500. Currently, the township ordinance states that these types of violations are considered a misdemeanor. We are intending to have revised ordinance language ready for the township board to consider at the July 24th meeting. This is an advance notice before the new ordinance will take effect. Thank you, that's all I have.
Madam Chair, if I may, I'd like to apologize for interrupting you. I apologize for that.
Mr. Busno, do you have a comment?
Yes, Madam Chair, I just wanted to respond. Ms. Goodhue knows full well that I was in Grand Rapids coaching my son's baseball team on Friday. Ms. Nevers knows that. She likes to read text. She can read the text when I responded to that. I think that was a very cheap shot. I was taking care of family business.
Thank you. That concludes the business for this evening.
Madam Chair, if there's no more discussion,
That concludes the business for this evening. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Ms. Posey, seconded by Mr. Krasinski to adjourn. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed by saying nay. That motion carries. We are adjourned.